In-store still is ultimately 80% of sales, right? Particularly in a world like Sainsbury's, it's slightly different in Argos, but within the grocery space, 80% of shoppers are going into your store on a day-to-day basis. And if you're not talking to them at that point of purchase in a relevant way, then you're missing out.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Identity Architects, the InfoSum podcast that spotlights the leaders in the media industry shaping the future of advertising. I'm Ben Cicchetti, and this week I had the opportunity to chat with Alice Anson, Director of Digital Media at Nectar360, to discuss what is still one of the hottest topics in our industry, retail media. Along the way, we also discuss customer loyalty, the value exchange, data privacy, and much, much more. Before we jump into that conversation, this is your reminder to hit that subscribe button to be alerted when new episodes of Identity Architects are available. But without any further delay, here's my chat with Alice. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Alice Anson, the Director of Digital Media at Nectar360. Alice, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Ben. Thanks so much for having me today.
For anyone who might be unfamiliar, can you just give us a quick introduction to yourself? And for those that are outside the UK and don't have a Nectar card in their wallet right now, like I do, a quick introduction to Nectar360.
No worries. I also hope you've got the Nectar app, Ben, not just the card, but we can dive into that a little bit later on. I'm Alice Anson. I look after all of our digital retail media at Nectar360. And that basically means that I have the privilege of managing all of our amazing partner relationships across that world, whether that be physical, digital, or kind of what we know as the digital space. Manage all of our amazing relationships with media agencies, as well as being able to get under the skin of what we do from a technology perspective. Nectar360 is the in-house retail media agency for the Sainsbury's Group. So it looks after all of our brands, so Sainsbury's, Argos, Habitat and Tu. And our job really is to create those meaningful connections between our customers and the brands that we work with.
I love that. We've definitely got a lot to cover off. We all know how much attention retail media is getting and the retail space is getting at the moment. So I know we have loads to discuss. But we'll start the way we always do, which is with a series of quickfire questions, just to get to know you a little bit better. Starting with, what's your earliest memory of advertising? And is it a Sainsbury's commercial?
Oh, God, it's not a Sainsbury's commercial, but it's definitely connected. And I definitely didn't know it was advertising at the time, but it's definitely the Argos catalogue.
Yes.
So sitting at home with my pen as a child, circling everything I wanted, that is definitely my first memory of what we know as advertising today.
I love that. I love the Argos catalogue. I miss the Argos catalogue. It's like a staple in everyone's home. You would walk into everyone's home in the UK and they would have a copy of the latest and greatest Argos catalogue. I love that. When you take yourself back to those days, circling things in the Argos catalogue, what did you want to be when you were younger?
Shocker, it was not retail media. So that was not what was on my list. It was actually, I wanted to be a vet. So everyone who knows me knows that I'm very, very passionate about animals. I've got 2 whippets, and they're just the center of my world. I wanted to be a vet.
I love that. And as a fellow dog owner, I can definitely appreciate that entirely. My dog makes regular appearances in the background of this podcast, usually heard barking at someone at my door. So I love that answer. So obviously with that not working out, what was your first job in either advertising or marketing or within the industry?
Yeah, so my first job in marketing was actually at lastminute.com. So I moved there to really kind of further my kind of career, if you like. So I started out at Amazon as a buyer and I thought, this is great, but actually, how do people find the stuff that I'm buying? So I moved over to lastminute.com and I was responsible for all of their kind of ancillary revenue, fancy word basically for spa breaks, theatre tickets, etc. And that was the first foray into the world of acronyms that we now live in. So SEO, PPC, CRM, all of that world. And it was fascinating to understand actually how you do influence kind of customer behavior and stuff. So yeah, that was my first role.
Yeah, that must have been fascinating. What do you think it was about the advertising industry that drew you in then? And what do you think keeps you in it to this day?
I love advertising because it is that perfect blend of data and creativity. So I'm naturally quite a creative person. And when I kind of went into marketing, I was like, this is amazing. I can use all of the creative piece of my brain. But then I'm also a massive geek when it comes to Excel and stuff like that. So being able to mine the data, look at the patterns, try and understand kind of how customers are thinking and feeling about your brand. So being able to fuse those two worlds together was really exciting for me. And I think that's kind of what got me caught caught on the bug that most of us get caught on.
Yeah. So as you think about other people that might be coming into the industry right now and listen to this podcast, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out in our industry?
I think stay curious, ask lots of questions. I always say to new starters when they join in the team that you are at the amazing point where you can ask as many questions as you like and people don't look at you as if to be like, you should really know that answer. So reaching out to people, finding connections, asking questions, that really is what kind of furthered my career and something I definitely recommend for anyone that is kind of looking to get started in the industry.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Staying curious and just constantly asking questions. Like to this day, I'm the person in the room that's going to ask all the questions. Because what I often find is you might not want to ask the question because you might think people are going to judge you for asking that question when the 50% of the room is thinking the exact same thing and doesn't want to ask that question. So if you're the one that's kind of willing to kind of ask the question, I think that's super powerful. A two-part question. What keeps you awake at night? And then what gets you up in the morning and motivated?
Not much keeps me awake because I love sleep. But when I am kind of kept awake at night, it's usually kind of ruminating over those questions like, what's the role of AI going to be in a future state? How is that going to affect work? How do we ensure that kind of data trust and all of the policies coming down the road? So it's really boring and probably usually gets me off to sleep quite quickly. And then what keeps me up in the morning? What gets me up in the morning? Actually, I love my job. Like it's no secret to anyone that knows me. And the main thing that gets me up in the morning is my team and the amazing partners and brands and agencies that we work with. So being able to really create those human connections, understand what's going on, and the pace of our industry is so fast, right? That there's always something new and always someone that you can, exactly as you say, ask that brave question, reach out to someone and be like, what's going on? So I think it is that gets me up in the morning.
Yeah, I love that. It says a lot about our industry, how often people is the answer, both people within your company, people outside your company. We're a very social industry, I think, and we're a very kind of network driven industry. So I think that makes a ton of sense. And obviously you mentioned how often the industry changes. It's an incredibly complex industry, as we both know. So how would you describe what you do within media and advertising to a 10-year-old?
I actually did a training course at Google a couple of weeks ago about creative thinking, and this was one of the questions they asked me. So I've already got this prepped. How I would describe my job to a 10-year-old is I make shopping fun and engaging. That's definitely what I remember as a 10-year-old. We all have those memories of being dragged around a supermarket by parents, grandparents, relatives, and I definitely wished it had been a bit more fun and a bit like the world that we have today when that was my Friday afternoon or after school.
I love that. That's a great answer. So the final of our quickfire questions, and the one that always gives me a little bit of insight into people. It's my favorite question to ask, but I'm quickly realizing it's not everyone's favorite answer to give, which is, if there was a song that was a soundtrack to your life, what would it be?
So the song that's probably followed me around most from university is Journey, Don't Stop Believing. And that was definitely the soundtrack of kind of my teenage years. And one of those that when it comes on, usually at the end of a night, let's be honest, is the one that will get me kind of screaming on the dance floor. And I just think it's got such a nice message as well. I was that small town girl that grew up in the country, moved to the big city. And yeah, I've got a dream and I'm kind of continuing to live it. So that's definitely the song that's a soundtrack to my life.
Yeah, that's a brilliant track. And as you say, it always tends to come on near the end of a night and it makes sure everyone kind of goes home with a buzz and a good feeling. So I think that's great. And we have a playlist on Spotify where we track everyone's choices. So we'll add that to the playlist. And it'll be at the end right now. So if you want to listen to it on a night out, it'll be the final song you hear. So that's a great moment. We'll move on to some of the more topic-related questions. As we've said, retail media is incredibly hyped right now. There's a lot of buzz around retail media, but it's not actually a new concept. And having spent your career in digital and e-commerce, and obviously most recently heading up Nectar360's digital media business, you know that better than most. So how has retail media evolved over your time in the industry?
Yeah, so I entered retail media around 6 years ago, and it was definitely called shopper marketing at that point in time. Let's be really clear. And then kind of we've evolved over the past few years into becoming much more part of the central marketing toolkit. And I think that's been, as you know, we've been on this rocky ride with cookies. We're back on the roller coaster, but people actually have probably become a bit more disenchanted with what the promise was of those, and the value of first-party data, and particularly permissioned first-party data within this world has kind of risen up. And I think that was kind of the turning point. I think then, as you start kind of talking to all of the brands that we work with, that fusion of customer insight and data and getting closer to that purchase behavior has really kind of evolved as we've gone through, various rocky roads in terms of cost of living crisis, and marketing budgets are increasingly put under more and more pressure. So the fact that we can give real-time performance data that ties back to sales, which ultimately is all of the brands' kind of key objective that they're working towards, is really kind of unlocked, I think, this magic sweet spot that we kind of find ourselves in now.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously Nectar360 is at the center of that. Sainsbury's, one of the biggest retailers and supermarkets in the country, alongside Argos and others. So how has Nectar360 adjusted to and seized that changing retail media landscape opportunity? And are there any exciting kind of partnerships or company news that you can share with us on the podcast?
Yeah, so it's been a real journey, as I said, over the last 6 years, kind of moving much more into a technology first business. So we've always had our Sainsbury's Insight platform that's been at the heart of everything we do in terms of telling us that why and that what around customer behavior. But over the last few years, we've kind of launched an e-commerce offering. We've launched our digital trading platform, which is our proprietary DSP, ventured into the world of clean rooms, obviously with you guys, and thinking about that connected TV experience. And I think that's kind of been the main evolution that we've gone on, is finding those opportunities where we can fuse the amazing client service that our teams have with the technology. And I like to think of our business really as it's technology powered by people. And that's what we will continue to be on that journey towards. I think in terms of exciting partnerships and company news, this is coming out, just after we've kind of done our company results. We're obviously expanding into the in-store digital space, and I think that's really exciting when you start to think about that proximity of digital to the shopper's behavior. We launched earlier in the year our smart shop proposition, so being able to put advertising on our kind of self-scan handsets, which was super exciting for us. And announced obviously our strategy for next level Sainsbury's, where we're going to be looking to unify all of our retail media proposition together to kind of make the experience much easier for brands and agencies who globally are working with over 200 retail media networks now. So lots going on. I think we will continue to see technology play a really key part in this space. Haven't mentioned AI, but we know that's coming, and we're thinking about how we kind of layer that in to make our brands kind of work alongside ourselves, be much more easy, efficient, and ultimately mean that we can get to that aim, that customer aim, as quick as possible.
Yeah, and you mentioned in-store, and I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people, when they think of retail media, largely think of it as a digital opportunity, and they focus on the digital experiences that it can drive. But obviously, you've mentioned in-store, and in-store experiences are still a massive focus for people like yourself. So why is that still such a strong focus? And what role do you see digital technology playing or continuing to play to underpin those physical experiences that customers have when they enter one of your shops?
Yeah, so in-store still is ultimately 80% of sales, right? Particularly in a world like Sainsbury's, it's slightly different in Argos, but within the grocery space, 80% of shoppers are going into your store on a day-to-day basis. And if you're not talking to them at that point of purchase in the relevant way, then you're missing out on the majority of the market. And let's not forget, all of those amazing upper funnel pieces like connected TV, social media, etc. But that kind of being at the point of purchase is really key. the UK really has been at the forefront of in-store experiences over the last few years. And, as we start to think about how we become more efficient, how we become more kind of with a lens on environmental and sustainability, you've got to think about that transition from traditional cardboard executions into the digital space. And, if you can combine that with an amazing renewable energy source, actually it is a much more relevant place to be. And then as we think kind of future forward, I think in-store is super exciting because you can start to overlay the understanding of the customers that are in that store. And when you're powered by an amazing loyalty program like we are, bringing those data sets together is super, super interesting. I think we will start to see, the digital in-store experience become a lot more creative. And, last month in October, we talked to IOB about bringing that creativity back to retail media, because that's really what our customers want to see. And we had an amazing quote from one of our customers that said that they want retail media to be iconic. And, I think that is the kind of piece that we need to hold in the forefront of our minds.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the big benefit, I guess, that you have is that Sainsbury's is an iconic brand, right? Sainsbury's is an iconic brand on the high street. Everyone has one in their town. And obviously retail media is a hot topic right now, as we've touched on. The broader category of commerce media is also incredibly exciting. So with your expertise, your experience of doing this at Sainsbury's Nectar360, what advice would you give to businesses that might be earlier in their retail media journey?
I think it's all around working out what your point of differentiation is. When we talk about that real busy landscape of different retail media networks, having that real clarity on what is the point of view that you are bringing to the market. How is your customer base really different to any other retailer's customer base? And how do you harness that through the opportunities that you've got to target them in a really relevant way, and then overlay with data sets? We're obviously incredibly lucky. Nectar has been around for 20 plus years. And so the wealth of data that we sit on is phenomenal, but we know a lot of other brands really are on that journey and won't have that first party data set probably for a little while. So I think having that real clarity of what your message is and what your retail media network stands for is key. And then you can hang everything off the back of that, right? And that's what's really important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think retail media is primarily viewed as an ad opportunity. But I think, as you've already alluded to, it also offers incredibly deep insights into customer, shopper, buyer behavior. So how do you see retailers balancing ad revenue generation with using that data to simply improve the customer experience?
It's a really interesting one, and it's something that we have as part of our kind of core objectives every year, is to not just think about growth and newness, but also use that amazing data that we have to continuously improve the product that we have. Now, that can mean stopping things, and we've done that particularly within our on-site proposition, where we've removed placements that are not working for brands, because it can feel like very much a pick and mix menu, and people kind of go and have them all, and we want to really use that data to make sure that we're showing up for our customers in the right space, because customer data is the lifeblood of everything we do at Nectar360. And if we don't treat that customer data with respect, and if we don't inspire that customer trust, then what they're going to do is take their data elsewhere, right? So it is really key that we're using that data to continually optimize, think about what we should be doing, think about areas of improvement, and also kind of make those brave decisions to stop stuff. It's not always about kind of adding more into it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think trust and respect were two words that really stood out there. And I think when you have a brand like Sainsbury's, obviously trust, loyalty, respect are incredibly important and paramount to all brands and retailers. How can organizations maintain customer loyalty, customer trust today, especially amidst such competing bids for attention, especially in the retail space, on high streets, online? How does that work?
For me, and the reason that I give my data up to businesses is there has to be that value exchange, right? So if you're going to understand things about me, how I shop, the location I live in, patterns of behavior, I want to receive something back for that, right? I want to feel like I'm being rewarded for that. Obviously at Nectar, we have Nectar prices, and I particularly love our kind of personalized your Nectar prices, where I'm getting rewarded for stuff that I buy every day. So I'm getting better prices for stuff that would naturally be in my shop to kind of really encourage that trust that I have with the Sainsbury's brand that they will do the right thing. I also personally love the data playbacks that we do at the end of the year. So every year we do that. You are the number one buyer of X in your local store. And I think bringing that little bit of fun into the customer journey is also super, super important. And it keeps people engaged, right? And that's what we want from loyalty. We want you to be engaged.
Yeah, I agree. And keeping that fun in it, I think, is such an important message. And it comes back to kind of that idea of creativity that you were talking about right at the start. Is how can we be creative with these experiences? And obviously, as we've touched on there, trust is an important part of your business. It's an important part of the InfoSum business. So how does Nectar360 view trusted partnerships and their value in building progressive data networks? Because no one company has all the data that is possible, right? And how do you perceive trust to factor in innovation when we start thinking about AI and other factors? And what needs to change to ensure that trust is just a foundation for our entire industry?
I think it's a really complex question, right? And we could probably debate this for hours on end, and probably still not come to the answer. When we are looking at innovation, that trust is one of the number one indicators that we have, far and beyond any of the others like revenue and all of those pieces, and that is because fundamentally, as I said, it is so important to us as a business. So we want to work with like-minded businesses that really view our customers the same way that we view them. We want to work with businesses that put that customer data privacy at the heart of everything we do, and that's obviously why we've loved working with you guys, because it very much is around that. Your data is your data, and you have the control over it. You can work with brands or providers in a way that is completely kind of ring fenced and in a privacy first way. And I think that's what's been super important for our partnership and something that we will continue to think about. And when you think about the future and where this is going, I think gone are the days of really complex privacy policies where you don't actually know what is happening with your data. And I hope we will move to a much more transparent way of working, where we will have to stand behind those partnerships, because we will have to be really overt about what they are and how they work, because our customers are becoming a lot more savvy in this space. They understand a lot more than we do. The fact that cookie deprecation has been all over the news. Like it's the day where actually people don't just think of cookies as something you eat. They now understand what they are, what the part is that they play. And so that informed customer will mean that, we will have to become, and we should, and we will become a lot more transparent as an industry, and have to stand behind every decision that we make.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things I love about the partners that we have at InfoSum, like Nectar360, is they all have one thing in common, which is they're all customer centric. And that's what they're focused on, is they want to deliver the best customer experience they possibly can, whether that's an advertising experience, whether it's an in-store experience, whether it's the content that they're providing. It's all focused on doing the right thing and the best thing by customers. So your response perfectly resonated with me. And you mentioned the future, and obviously we're nearing the end of 2024. What excites you about where the industry is going and where we're headed as we enter into 2025?
I think there's a few things for me that 2025 should hopefully bring with it. We have debated standardization and measurement as part of retail media for a good few years now. I think it is the time where we have to make that change. As an industry, we have to stand up. We have to be accounted alongside our counterparts in programmatic and all of the scrutiny that they've gone through over the next few years. And that is a natural part of our growth. So I think standardization is going to be the first one for me. I think the second one for me is going to be creativity, and I think we're going to see a lot more creativity within the space. You know, our customers are looking for relief, fun, excitement as they're undergoing their shopping missions. And I think thinking about how we can really bring that to life is going to be, for me personally, quite an exciting thing that we can bring. And then probably the third thing for me that I'm going to see in 2025, and apologies, it is that AI word. You know, we are seeing it as more part of our working life. I use Copilot on a day-to-day basis, and I love it despite all of its flaws at times. And I think we'll start to see more of that within the media space. And I think, you know, for me, the exciting part about what AI is going to bring, and I'm probably more talking predictive AI versus generative AI, is all of that time that people who have previously had to spend ages working through laborious processes are going to have to do the really exciting, innovative stuff. And that's the key thing for me, is I really see AI as an enabler to us actually re-unlocking our more creative and innovative brain. So yeah, those are probably the three things for me for 2025.
I love those. I love all of those. And obviously, you know, it wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't talk about AI. And I tend to agree with you. I think AI is a fantastic enabler. And as a marketer and as someone who would be classified as a content marketer, I love that AI allows me to spend more of my time being creative and focusing on creative ideas. So I completely agree with your perspective on it and how it kind of unlocks creativity. As we wrap things up, is there anything we haven't touched on that we should? I mean, we haven't even mentioned that we are now an award-winning partnership, as we won the European Video Award recently. So we haven't mentioned that. So I'll mention that just to get that plug in. But is there anything else we haven't touched on that we should do?
Definitely the awards. That was an amazing moment. I remember, unfortunately, I couldn't be there, but I remember getting the text message and very excited because it's the culmination of many years of working together. So that's been phenomenal. Anything that we haven't mentioned, oh my gosh, there's so much right within this space. Almost every day there is a new kind of announcement or change. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really, really enjoyed the conversation. And it's gone really quick for me. I don't know if it's gone quick for you.
It's a good sign when these things go smoothly and quickly. It's always a really positive sign. Yeah, no, I agree. This has been super interesting. It's been great to get to know you better. It's always great to get to know Nectar360 in more detail. I think it's a fascinating organization. Obviously, Sainsbury's, the larger group, is a fascinating organization. You know, as this podcast is focused on people like yourself who are pioneering new ways to use that data that we've just spent all that time talking about to deliver those better experiences that we've agreed should be the priority. So when you look at people that you admire in the industry, who would you nominate for me to interview on an upcoming episode of Identity Architects?
So I suspected this question was coming. So I had a look back through, and my God, you've had a lot of amazing people. So I think the list is getting smaller and smaller every podcast you do. But the one person probably for me would be James Chandler from the IAB. We were really privileged at Nectar360 that he gave up his time to come and give us a little bit of an in-depth breakdown of what he's done in his career, and he's got a fascinating career, and I think you'd really enjoy that element of the chat with him. But obviously everything that he's been doing with the IAB to really kind of raise the prominence of retail media alongside everything else that they do as a wider organization, I think you'd have a great chat with him, so he would definitely be my nomination.
I love that. I think that's a great nomination. We will definitely reach out to him and try and get him on a future episode of Identity Architect. Alice, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This has really been such a fascinating conversation. I've really enjoyed learning more about you, learning more about Nectar, but also just thank you for the partnership that we have with Nectar360. As we both touched on, those customer-centric organizations, we're seeing more and more of them, but there are pioneering organizations that were there at the forefront, like Nectar, that were there right at the start. So I just really appreciate our partnership and look forward to even more in the future.
Absolutely. And just a personal thing, obviously InfoSum is powered by people, and you guys definitely have some of the best people. So a massive thank you to you guys as well for leaning in.
I love that. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thanks again to Alice for being on the podcast. I never get bored of chatting retail media, especially with a brand like Nectar360, and especially with someone like Alice, who is not only thinking about the space today, but the space in the future, and is always keeping customers at the heart of everything. All that's left for me to do is to remind you to hit that subscribe button to know when the next episode of Identity Architects lands. But until then, thanks for listening.